We had a number of questions that have come in, so I think we'll go straight into them. So there's one here for Giles. I think we'll start off with. In the event of a breach, what do you think is the most appropriate response by users and the company?
Thank you very much. Let's go with the glib, don't start from here.
Well,
but stepping back, there seem to be two routes which are tried by companies. One is to bury the bad news, pretend it never happened, hide away, obfuscate. Personally, this is getting out of corporate speak into my world. I don't like that. My approach, I'm also the Chief Information Security Officer at Pexip. We try and be as open and forward-leaning as we can with our customers. There are occasions where you wish to be careful about what you disclose. So it's the usual bug issue of responsible disclosure. You find a problem in product X, plastering that all over the internet and saying there's a problem here before tapping the company on the shoulder and saying, do you want to fix this, is probably a bad idea. But as full a disclosure as possible, as full a root cause analysis as possible, and as full a follow-up and fix internally as possible is definitely the philosophy we take.
Okay, thanks for that, Giles. I've got one that's for Erke here. Although it's slightly paraphrased from what came in the Q&A, but although UK law currently aligns to the GDPR, EU GDPR, what happens if our laws diverge? What direction do you think things would go in?
It's very interesting because some level of adequacy has just been decided, and the same week the UK government says, but we want to liberate our data protection law so people have more opportunities for exploiting it. And I think even in my presentation I mentioned NHSX versus NHS Digital, and they already have that sort of imbalance, that contrast between them. NHS Digital doing things more in a nice way that's responsible, and NHS X wanting to apply AI and do spectacular things. And that tension is going to remain in UK government, and at some point it's going to be a question of are they really going to relax the rules there in order to create commercial opportunities, and will they be prepared to deal with the backlash of the EU at that point, saying, well, then actually you're no longer adequate. I mean, that becomes politics, right? I think the UK government will have learned what it meant that they didn't want to comply. They didn't want to be compliant on financial regulation. So everyone's moved from London to Amsterdam and Frankfurt now. Whether the same thing will happen in the data sector eventually, which is supposed to be a big sector for the UK. Interesting. So at the moment, there is the UK GDPR, as it's called, is very, very broadly equivalent to GDPR, and the Data Protection Act 2018 is very much in line with it. But yeah, there's rumors of deviation, and it won't end well.
It won't end well. Okay, that's the takeaway message. Okay, we'll see how that pans out. This is a question actually for all of you in different angles. So maybe we'll go to Nishant first on this. But how do you see the balance between privacy and utility playing out over the coming years?
Yeah, well, I guess there's this thing, there's this viewpoint which says that privacy is like a first world problem, but it really is not. It affects everyone, and it's just that maybe some people see it and some people don't see it, so I think it's important to balance privacy versus utility somehow, and if it's left up to the users, they will choose utility, they will choose usability, and not privacy. So it has to be somehow pushed from the regulation perspective, which has to be pushed from the tech perspective to make it easier to enable private options to be taken. Just taking the consent management as an example, almost every single website that I visit makes it much more easy for me to click accept all than to go through one by one and pick the most private option for me. And these sort of dark patterns are not a good way to encourage privacy by any means. And so this has to be coming both from a tech perspective and also from a regulation perspective. It's not enough to just say, we give you consent. We need to enable that consent in useful manners.
Okay, I saw Erke nodding with along to some of that. Would you want to chip in there, Erke?
Sure. I think privacy versus utility is also ever so slightly devious way of stating it, because I think privacy preserving ways of doing things are moving on fast, which means that we don't necessarily need to lose a lot of utility. And I see that imbalance in things like do we deal with anonymized data here or not? But I think effectively it is a false dichotomy even there, because the utility of the data at some level it means what you can do with it, the level to which you can use it against people, and then the question becomes where is the data, who has it? Right. The best example, coming back to apps, it is fantastic how the UK COVID app version 2 does location check-in. Right. People scan a QR code at a location, and that gets stored in the phone, and nobody ever hears anything about that unless somebody reports to the phones that there is an incident in that location. It's not being used much, but it is so infinitely better than the previous solution, which was that the bar would put a list on the bar, and people would write down their name or Mickey Mouse and their phone number on it, and creepy people would pick up the phone number of the attractive person they saw in line before them and give them stalking messages, and it would still be a messy piece of paper that the bar would have no idea of how to do data governance on or deal with it properly in any sort of way. So the privacy preserving solution in that case is in so many ways superior and has exactly the same, well, has probably better utility than the obvious solution. So maybe it's not really a dichotomy.
It's a nice example. Okay, Giles, do you want to come in on that as well?
Yeah, I think it emphasizes the need for designing privacy in from day one, or security. If you try and retrofit it, it becomes a bolt-on on the side. It will be clunky to use because it's not in your main workflow. So it's making this at the heart of your software development process. I'll disagree. I'm going to be daring and disagree slightly with Erke here and say there is a trade-off between privacy and utility. Filling in Mickey Mouse on that sheet of paper and a random phone number gives you total privacy and no utility. We have customers also who take the same approach, not quite putting Mickey Mouse on the purchase order, but disconnecting their entire system from the internet because they wish to be private. Massively reduces the utility, but that's an intentional decision on their part. So there is an intended gradient between privacy and utility, and we have to acknowledge that one. But overwhelming that vastly is the unintended gradient. So if we just fix the unintended one, we'll be in a much, much better place.
Okay. Oh, thank you all for answering that question. Different perspectives. Okay, I've got conscious of time, maybe time for one or two more. There's a technical one here for Giles. Says Codex and Codec SDKs used to be a rich source of inspiration, I think inspiration in quotes, which I think means the codecs were exploitable. Is this still the case?
That's actually quite a fun question. Codecs are the pieces of software that encode and decode, hence co and dec, audio and video in video conferencing. Back in the good old days, they used to be very vulnerable to all sorts of exciting bugs, and it was mostly a denial of service type attack, as in you could blow up an endpoint or a video mixer by sending carefully framed packets at it, and everything went bang. We got better at testing, so fuzzing attacks and so forth are now much more routine in day-to-day software development. So the things have got hardened slightly, considerably. So that makes us less vulnerable. On the other side, and this is a little bit of a hobby horse, there used to be a lot of companies in the video conferencing industry doing all sorts of different things. Polycom, Tandberg, Cisco, Huawei, lots of them, all writing their own software. So if you were going to attack a codec, you would have to decide which manufacturer's codec you were after. And so you had a very limited range of targets. So it wasn't terribly, you weren't getting much money back for it because all you're doing is blowing endpoints up. And you didn't have a very rich environment to attack. With the advent of laptop-based video conferencing, more and more of that is moving to a technology called WebRTC, which was made public by Google a few years ago. And it's great. It works really, really well. But it's a single environment. So now, if you were to find a vulnerability in that, your opportunity to exploit it is far greater. So it's no longer a rich source of inspiration, but it is a source of inspiration which will provide richer gains to you should you crack it, I think. And that's not encouragement to do so.
Okay, no, that's a great insight, actually. Thank you for that. Well, I'm looking at the time now, and I'm conscious. I think that's all we've had time for. So apologies for the questions that we've not reached, but I think we've had some good discussion there and some good answers. So thank you for that. So thanks to the panel for joining and for answering the questions, and thanks to the audience for joining today. I'm going to hand back now to Andrew to talk about what's coming up next. But thank you for joining this first event in the Future of Cybersecurity session. So over to Andrew.
Thank you, Steve. And just while I shan't show my video, I'll just go on this slide. You've got some contact details, so you can contact us at sccs@surrey.ac.uk. You can look at the website, so the university website, surrey.ac.uk/sccs. And you can also follow us on Twitter at sccs@uni-surrey. So thanks, Steve. Thanks to the panelists. We will be making edited highlights of this session available in the near future. I'd also like to trail the second in this series, the Future of Cyber series. Will be looking at the advent of digital democracy, specifically drawing upon the Institute of Engineering Technology's recently published report on e-voting, in which Steve Schneider, Surrey University's professor of SCCS, chaired the IET session and can guide us through some of the findings in that report, along with some invited speakers. And it's fascinating to go through that, looking at extending some of the issues that we've discussed today. We'll discuss the wider implications of being able to consult with a country's population on a more frequent basis, as is found to be the case in some countries that have e-voting. We'll also hope to explore issues such as digital influence, fake news, and the potential for digital divides that disenfranchise sections of the population. So keep an eye out for that invitation. We haven't set the date yet, but it's likely to be early June. And follow up on this website to get the edited highlights from this session. So thank you for attending. Thanks to our panelists. Thank you for this first session, and we look forward to seeing you again. Stay safe and stay well.